Hi, I'm Josie Schaefer, Director of the Center for Public Affairs Research at the University of Nebraska at Omaha, and I'm here today with Kim Davis from the United States Census Bureau, a data dissemination specialist, and we're here to follow up on a great presentation you recently gave at our data and research series for community impact on economic data at the Census Bureau. Thanks for coming, Kim.
Thank you for having me.
Oh my gosh, I appreciate it. We appreciate your time so much. We appreciate all that you and the Census Bureau do for us here in Nebraska, so thanks. There are a variety of sources for economic data at the U.S. Census Bureau, maybe too many to talk about here, but wondering if you can just give us some insights into what some of those sources you see people use pretty often, and maybe how they use some of them.
Yeah, absolutely. So the Census Bureau has about 60 programs that support the data for the economic indicators, the economic data that we produce. And of those programs, I think the most valuable and helpful is the economic census that's conducted every 5 years. And then we have the program, the LEHD, the local employment dynamic, household dynamics, which produces data monthly and quarterly.
Awesome. So, and that's kind of pretty exciting, right? So that data coming out every 5 years, that economic census, is a pretty hefty survey, lots of great information. And is that why it needs to come out every 5 years, or what is the reasoning behind that time interval?
Yeah, so that's a really great question. So the economic census is very valuable in that it establishes the baseline for all of the economic data that the federal government produces. We redo the economic census every 5 years. It's mandatory, and it sets that baseline for us to produce all the other economic information and indicators.
And how is the household employer dynamics a little bit different?
Yeah, so the LEHD program comes from the county business pattern data. So it is a information that is received in from the counties, not from the surveys that are conducted at the actual establishments of the businesses.
So you bring up the next thing I wanted to ask about, this term establishment. So when we're looking at economic data and we're talking surveying or getting information about businesses, you all use this term establishments. Can you sort of help us to understand what that is exactly?
Yes, actually, it's a very important term to understand. So when we talk about establishments are the single physical location of a business, which differs from the firm or the business headquarters. So we're talking about the physical location when we talk about establishment, where the actual business is conducted. So where the employees are working and the income is brought in.
I have used that program before, and every once in a while there's a state or a couple counties missing for a certain time period. And I tend to understand why that happens or how that happens, but can you just sort of comment on sort of the struggles it is sometimes to get that information
Right. That's a really good question. Like many of the programs at the Census Bureau, we have a standard threshold minimum that is required for us to produce data. The reason that we have a threshold is we don't want to compromise anyone's identity, and that does include the business's identity. So protected under Title 13 and 26, we cannot publish data that would compromise identity.
One last question for you, but it might be a big one. So QWI Explorer, can you explain a little bit about what that is, what data it integrates, and maybe some questions you've seen folks use that for to answer?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So QWI Explorer is the quarterly workforce indicator data tool. It contains the workforce statistics that are provided from the county business patterns. It provides demographic, geographic, and industry data for the states, counties, and the workforce investment areas. The advantage to using the QWI Explorer is that it gives information to the data user in a very current manner, so you can get data quarterly. And you also can get data in different variables. So it allows you to look at it on a map as well as in charts and graphs with coordinating charts to complete the picture of the data that you're looking at.
Absolutely. It makes working with that data a lot easier and provides, puts together several variables that I bet a lot of people use for all sorts of reasons. Can you give us some examples you've seen people use it for?
Yeah, so it's often used for start of employment at the quarter. So who's employed at the start, as well as ending employment. So it gives us information about who's employed at the start of the quarter and then who isn't employed at the end of the quarter. It also shares information from a different perspective. So you can look at data in QWI from the employer view as well as the individual view. There's information also about in the payroll for the
Oh yeah, that's absolutely, that's a good one too. Yeah, and I've used it in some annual reporting with our business development center. And there are always quarterly cycles, and there's some industries that grow during certain times of the year versus other times of the year. So it takes a minute to sort of understand the economy a little bit more, but then it's really helpful for looking at sector or geographic level growth or change in the economy over time, for sure.
Yes, I agree. It shows us, it gives us a great snapshot of the trending of the workforce, because we can look at what is our workforce, what industry are they working in, what are the ages of the industry, and where are the shortcomings, where we can start to anticipate that we have an aging workforce and we may need to fill those gaps. So it keeps us up to date on trending data.
Absolutely. And I love so much of the economic data is available quarterly, and we get all sorts of questions about timely data. And so some of these resources can be invaluable to sort of fill those gaps as we wait for the ECS.
Yes.
We certainly love it. Well, Kim, thank you so much for hopping on again and talking with us. We appreciate you so much.
Thank you for having me, Josie. Have a great day.